All right. My guest today is an author of the book Clarity, Crack the Code to Healing Body, Mind, and Emotions from the Inside Out. She is a women's fitness coach, mom of three, and lives in Minocqua, Wisconsin, where I vacation all the time. I love it up there. It's beautiful. So welcome to the show, Nikki Engels.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, we had a mutual friend introduce us, and she shared your story, and I just wanted to get you on because anytime people do something that's different, that's out of the usual, I'd love to just hear that and share those stories because I believe, one conversation, one little insight can change our lives. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I totally agree with you on that too. There's always a nugget there somewhere, so it's nice to keep learning.
Absolutely. So let's get into a little bit about your story. I know you were telling me that you went through a little bit of a hard time and that started to manifest in your body in certain ways. So tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So back in 2013, I ended up, well, I shouldn't say I ended up, I was pregnant with my son. And it kind of started off like very rocky right away from the beginning. And the pregnancy was hard. We almost lost him at 9 weeks. And then he came into the world early, almost lost him at that point too. And he fought through it, taught me a lot on how to be strong. Kind of thought that was the end of my journey. I was like, okay, I got through that. Everything is good. And then literally like 2 months later, our house burned down in a fire. Lost everything. I mean, it was a miracle that we weren't home, but we couldn't pretty much salvage much of anything. At the same time as all this was going on, we actually had bought a new, my husband and I own martial arts school, and we bought a new school and we were remodeling it. It was actually an old bank, and we were going through and remodeling the whole thing. And so literally just in one night, it was like our world got turned upside down. So, our son still had health issues. Our house was gone. All of a sudden we're moving schools for our business. And it was just the amount of trauma that I felt is undescribable. Like anybody that goes through trauma, they can't really quite put a word to like how bad it hurts, right? And those were just the big things. There were so many little things. Like we had a flood in our school and my husband was in a car accident and then he had surgery. I mean, like it was just like this roller coaster of events happened. And it pretty much went from the end of 2013. My son was born in August. The fire happened in November 2013. And this trend of negativity just kept going pretty much all the way through like 2014. And so it was hard. It was so hard. So
what emotions would you say you experience on a daily basis? Was it like anxiety, depression, worry? Like if you had certain emotions, what were a few of those?
Yeah, I would say emotionally, I felt lost, but more than anything in the book, I actually talk about this. We talk about emotions a lot because it's super important, is that out of all the trauma, what ended up happening was my alter ego came out and I became this like superwoman. And it was like I had to put this cape on and I had to hold up my whole family. And I ended up burning myself out. I mean, like the anger and the just, I don't know, you find courage and bravery, but sometimes there's a difference between having courage and bravery being like a good thing and then it being destructive. And so inside I could just tell my body was wrecked. It was just emotionally tired. And the amount of anger I think was probably the biggest thing. Like, why did it happen? What did I do to deserve all this stuff, this negativity to kind of come at me? And just frustration. Like it was just so many negative thoughts. I mean, pretty much any negative thought you could think of, I was there. And honestly, it ended up catapulting into my health declining. And here I am, a fitness teacher, right? Like I talk health. I'm all about it. Like we eat healthy and, I'm a positive person, but I think at some points in life, it's unfortunate, but bad things do happen and you have a choice. You have a choice to either decide, am I going to let this wreck me or am I going to push through it? And what I learned in this whole journey was that I was letting it wreck me. Like I was letting my emotions and letting just the turmoil of all the decision makings really just it hurt the inside of me. And I had no clue what it was doing, right? So I'll fast forward a little bit if you're okay with that.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, especially anger, like anger's so poisonous to the body. I just worked with a client, did some hypnosis sessions last week and got some of that emotion out, and like different person, like totally different energy, you know, different pain. And so I'm guessing after a few years, these emotions, like, well, I mean, I know that they started to wear down on you. Like, what specific ways did those start to manifest in your body?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the biggest one was actually the chronic fatigue. I was so tired. I mean, I just didn't have energy to do anything. I mean, I went from having a pretty lively life to just sitting in the car and crying and just feeling like I don't even know what's happening. So chronic fatigue was a big one. I also started noticing, so at this point in our life, we're kind of putting things back together. We're like in our house, in our new house, or in our new school. And I'm actually training jujitsu at the time. And we're working with some of the bigger guys that are doing some professional fighting, and I'm rolling with them, and I'm like, they're just the gentlest giants, right? Like they would never do anything that would make me feel uncomfortable. And at one point, it was just like I started to roll and my body just freaked out, and I just had instant pain all over. Like my whole back was just like lit up with fire. So really, I think all these emotions, to kind of get back to your question, was I didn't really do anything physically to hurt myself, but the emotions were hurting me inside. So as I'm doing anything, they just started to kind of break down the end part of the body. And it was crazy. At that point, I was like, okay, something's going on. I went from having a 6-pack to looking like I'm 3 months pregnant after I'm eating. I was just like, why is my body freaking out? Like, why do I have physical pain everywhere? Why can I not do certain movements anymore without my back flaring up? And just tired. I'd lay on the mat, like we'd go through and we'd train martial arts, and we would be doing our jiu-jitsu, and I would lay there. I would just literally get done rolling. I was just like, I can't get up right now. Like I'm just done. Like it was very abnormal for me. I mean, I could train for hours. And so all of a sudden it was like I knew all of the emotions had just taken a toll on my body.
So as often happens when we get to this point of necessity for something to change, right? It's not until we experience enough pain that we're forced to like look into something different. So I'm guessing you went on this journey to learn like what happened, like what's happening to me, how do I heal this, right? Or was there more that came into your body on the negative side?
Yeah, actually, so it gets even worse. These are all symptoms that I started feeling beforehand, right? And it ended up happening July 4th, 2016, and I was actually doing a jiu-jitsu demonstration in a 4th of July parade. It was right after that I realized I couldn't see very well. I'd been doing some techniques, and I ended up kind of getting hit in the head a little bit. So I thought, oh, I just have a headache. Like, it's fine. It's not a big deal. Ended up the next day, I was like, there's something wrong. Like, I totally can't see very well. Like, there's something off. So here I'm thinking sports-related injury, like it'll be fine. It won't be a big deal. Just get some drops in my eye or whatever. And so I end up going into the doctor and find out that I have a retinal bleed in the back of my eye. So the eye is pretty detailed in how it works. And so the bleed in the back of the eye was basically pushing fluid into the center of my eye. And it was so close to the center of my eye that they said, if you don't get these injections, which were a cancer medication injection, and it's pretty common, most people who have macular degeneration get these all the time. They said, if you don't get these shots, you'll for surely go blind. So the fluid is literally pushing into the center of your eye. And, if that happens, you're going to not be able to see at all. I could already tell my vision was starting to shift because like straight lines, like straight objects weren't straight anymore. Everything was wavy. It looked like I was looking through saran wrap.
Is this in one eye or both eyes?
With one eye.
Okay.
So with my right eye. And it was crazy. So we went in, they said, well, you get these injections, it'll stay in the eyeball. And I was like, but it's cancer medication. Like, I don't want that in my body. And they said, well, it's a contained part of your body. Like, it's not going to leak outside of your eyeball. And I'm like, okay. So I'm literally left with a choice of take the shot or go blind. And, you start looking at your life totally differently in that moment. You're like, yeah, of course we'll have to do this, What I didn't realize was that this journey I was about to go on was going to be a few years. I ended up having 19 injections in my eye, and you're awake for it. It's insane. I had an allergic reaction to something in the first shot that I had. And yeah, it was crazy. They said it was contained. They said that, the medication was fine, but my hair started to fall out a little bit. My skin wasn't healing. My food allergies got worse. So that, was a huge eye-opening moment. So yeah, the emotions with that ended up being a lot more than I think all the other stuff combined. It just kind of piled on itself. So I guess the takeaway from my story too, and just kind of like looking back at all of it and why did I even write a book? Like, what was the purpose of it? And honestly, I realized in all this stuff that there's so many people that are hurting, and it can be one trauma or another, but either way, the emotions are still there. Someone's pain in one aspect is very different than in another. I mean, they could have the same experience, and the way that they take that experience and their emotions that they associate with it are totally different, or they might have some similarities, right? But in any case, and anytime you have trauma, the biggest takeaway from all of it is you have to make a decision. You can't just sit there and like, woe is me about it. Like, it doesn't fix anything if you are just sitting and trying to understand it, right? I mean, that's a part of it. It's process, but you still have to make the decision. So for me, I made the decision, I'm going to heal this. Like, my doctors were like, there's really nothing you can do. There's no research out there. It's super rare because you're only in your 30s. This usually happens to people in their 70s. You just have to wait. You might have to get these shots the rest of your life. You just have to wait. So then I was like, no, I'm not. I'm making the decision. I'm going to heal myself. And so I always go back to this because there's a quote that I love by Henry Ford, and you probably have heard this before, but whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And I really had to sit and reflect on that for quite a while, because it was, here I have my doctors telling me one thing, but if I truly believe them, then I'm never going to find the answer. But if I truly believe that I can heal myself, well, then I'm right too, right? Like, I can have a say in this journey, and I don't have to just lay down and say, oh, I guess this were the cards that were dealt to me.
Yeah, that faith and certainty, and I talk about this a lot, that faith and certainty going into anything is what changes your mind to see the world differently. It's what brings opportunities to you. It's what prevents you from stopping right before you get what you're after. And so you had that as you went on this journey to find ways to heal yourself, right?
Yeah, totally. I think the biggest part too is that people have to figure out why. Like, they made the decision, okay, I'm going to do this, but then why? Why do you want that so bad? And for me, I mean, my why was my children. And then the fact too that like, they're growing up. I don't want to miss that. And if it happened in one eye, well, what else is going on in my body, right? Like, you have to know why you want to do something, and you have to have that belief in order to push yourself forward even more. I think, another big takeaway too, like anybody that's in a situation, whether it's, I don't know, family struggles, right? Like, everybody has somebody or something that they struggle with. It can be weight issues. It could be emotional trauma from your past of any kind. Like, there's emotions that are constantly coming up for you, and there's triggers that as you go through your day, all of a sudden you might be like, oh, I'm really annoyed by that. And ask yourself, like, what is that? Where's that even coming from? And a lot of times too, like, whatever condition that you have, maybe it's something simple like chronic headaches, right? Well, where's that coming from? Like, what's triggering the headaches? And even if your doctors say, like, work with your doctors, like 100%, make sure that you know all the information, you get all the facts. But also do the research. Like go and dive in and like figure out like how, for me, how does the eyeball work? How does the inner workings of it work? How does the retina work? How does the shot stop the bleed? You know, what happens? What are the side effects? Like you have to be your own detective whenever you're trying to figure out something with your own health. But you also have to remember too that like you know yourself the best and you can tap inward. It just takes a little practice. A lot of people don't remember how to do that.
Yeah. And I always think, there's a few areas of our life where you have to be educated. You can't just take an expert's advice, right? And I think that's our money, how we raise our kids, on our emotional and spiritual, and then our health, right? Like those areas you have to dive into to really understand the fundamentals and the philosophy of why you believe and why you do what you do. And so for you to go, question the authorities, I think most people don't do that, but it's what led you down a totally different path, right?
Yeah. It's funny actually during the story, there's a couple times in the book where I talk about this and I'm going in, I'm telling my doctor like, hey, this is what I'm doing and what do you think? And I'll kind of get his opinion. Um, and then there's moments where I challenge him and I'm like, well, what about this? Or what about that? And it's funny because I don't know if I put it a lot in there, but it's funny because I think back to looking at his facial expressions and his just like, whoa, like, where is this coming from? Um, like those are the moments that I kind of lived for. It was kind of fun to like, I don't know, poke the bear in a sense of I'm going to be different in this. Like if my case is super rare, well, then I'm going to be really rare with how I'm answering or asking these questions, Um, you have to find fun in it. You have to find the humor in like your situation because you've got to retrain your body to say, I'm in this negativity. Okay, how do I switch my mindset and how do I make this a positive thing? Because if you can't do that, right? Like if you're really, really stuck, it's going to take a little bit more work, but I know everybody has that in them. Like they can find happiness. They can find that joy. Kind of reprogramming yourself to then to switch that, it's like, okay, well, I had to get another injection, but you know what? I pushed my appointment out and now I'm going 7 weeks instead of every 4 to 6 weeks. And so you just find the little happy each time you go and you just keep building on it, just like setting little goals. And keep listening inward because the answers are there. Your body knows what it needs. But it takes a little bit to try to like sift through what everybody else is telling you, what society's telling you, what you see on the news, right? But the answers are there. They're in your heart.
So tell me about that. So what did you start to study? How did you start to tap into your body and your own, your own truth in there, to resolve this issue or to make forward progress?
Yeah. They were baby steps for me. I'm hoping with my book at least too and getting out there and talking to more people that I can give them a little bit of a fast track. But there was little successes along the way. Like my doctor would say to me, wow, you're really in tune with your body. Like no one's ever experienced things that you're experiencing. And I was like, really? Are you sure? Are they just not asking you? Like, why is my skin not healing? Like that's a side effect of the medication. He's like, well, most people don't really ask me those questions. And so I think I had these little mini success moments where I kept being reminded that like, hey, you're really in tune. You really know what's going on. And then I started to focus outward and I was like, okay, I know what's happening in here, but what's affecting me outside that then is affecting me inside. So hopefully that makes sense. And so I started looking at kind of what's in my environment. Like, what is my day-to-day routines? Who am I hanging out with? Like, what are my stressors in life? Because, ultimately those things are going to affect your emotions. And what I ended up finding was like, what kind of energy space was I in? Like, did I actually do this to myself because I was accepting negative energy coming inward? And honestly, that was the truth. I was parts of our business were not in line with our true values. And that negativity of constantly just trying to like, oh, it's fine. I'm just going to deal with this, or I'm going to push forward even though I'm tired. That ends up crumbling you because you kind of lose sight of what's inside. So what's your energy space? Like, are you allowing a friend or a family member to constantly, talk to you a certain way? Or, I don't know, are you putting yourself in an unhealthy work environment? Well, let's take it this way. My marriage is absolutely wonderful, and my husband has helped me so much in this, but I know that there's so many people out there that they're in a marriage that gives them stress, and they really have to sit down and they have to ask themselves a question of, what energy space am I putting myself in a daily basis that could be causing some of these negative emotions to come in, and how can I change it, right? I'll go back to quotes because I love quotes. They always help anchor me back to the past and kind of bring it full circle. But Einstein said, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, right? The same idea. Like, if you are in a bad work environment and you are constantly putting yourself in that position day after day after day, every single day you're constantly flooded with negative emotions. And then they start to build on themselves, right? So you get frustrated and you go to work again. And it's like, now you're already frustrated before you walk in the door. And then you layer it on top of more frustration. And so it just ends up becoming this pile of like negative baggage. I mean, we all have some sort of baggage. My journey was, how do I get rid of it? Like, how do I stop having those things happen to me? And then how do I move forward? Because ultimately, my goal was to heal my eye. That was whatever it was. I didn't care who I maybe annoyed or who I was like, maybe they felt like I wasn't treating them unfair. At that moment, it was like I needed to listen to myself for once instead of listening to how other people viewed me. And I think that in doing so, I made some really hard decisions. There was certain parts of our business that we shut down. I actually used to do photography. I don't do photography anymore. And, there were parts of like my core identity or who I thought I was that I had to set aside because it was like, this is actually hurting me. Like, this isn't really making me feel good. This is actually just bringing up more and more negative feelings of frustration and anger. And,
so did this all come with just self-awareness about what was causing you negative emotions in your life?
Yeah, I really had to step back, and I did a lot of journaling too, as far as, gosh, what were my pain points? Like, how did I get here? And you just have to reflect backwards, because in order to move forward, sometimes you got to clear up what you left behind so that you don't keep repeating the patterns. There's a lot of patterns in life where, you'll think back and you're like, gosh, the same thing happened to me 4 years ago. Why is that? And it's like, well, you're doing the same things and you're cycling back around to the same emotions. And so, we're creatures of habit too. And sometimes it takes a moment of reflection, a moment of visualization and meditation to say, okay, I'm breaking this pattern. I have to, because if I don't, I'm just going to wreck myself even more. So it's just like Einstein said, you have to change up the pattern. Like, you can't expect to get a different result if you keep doing the same thing over and over again. So yeah, energy space was huge for me. Like, who was I around? What was I doing in my day to day? What could I cut out? And I had to ask myself the tough questions too. And I would challenge anybody listening to this to really step back and reflect and say, okay, this part of my life is not awesome. Like, this doesn't bring me any joy. All it does is bring me negativity. And then start working backwards. Like, how can you change that? Like, if it's a job, okay, awesome. Let's figure it out. Like, can you find a different position in that job? Or can you start applying for different positions? Like, what are the possibilities? Like, give yourself that freedom to ask yourself those hard questions.
Yeah, I used to manage all my own properties, and it would just it would run me into the ground. It wasn't what I was built for. And as soon as I gave that to a property manager, like, my quality of life changed dramatically because I got what was pulling me down out of my life. Right. And I think that's kind of the sentiments that you're talking about there.
Yeah, totally. And everybody's situation is different too. I mean, how it feels to be in that. So then it's
Yeah.
like, let's change it.
Yeah, we all know, right?
Yeah.
So all right, so we're getting the things in our life that are kind of triggering us, that are upsetting us, frustrating us. If we have some awareness around what's causing that, make some tough decisions, get those out of our life. And then as far as like healing modalities, so is that diet, energy work, meditation, were there some specific rituals and practices that you used?
Yeah, there was actually quite a few. Like my journey was a few years long. And so I ended up eating all organic, which I'm super passionate about. And I really want to encourage more people to look into it. We really need to look at what's in our food, right? I mean, like if you don't have good nutrition going into the body, like goodness isn't coming out either, right? Like you got to put in what you get out. And it's, that was a big one for me. I didn't realize like how important that was. But really looking at what's in your food, staying away from sugars, making sure that you are aware of if you have a food allergy. Like the food allergies are going through the roof right now. A lot of the times what I found, and I'll get into this a little bit later, but a lot of times what I found was allergies to foods and emotions are very connected.
Yes.
And a lot of times they'll pop up because you're constantly putting yourself in that same energy space with your emotions. So eating organic was huge because for me it was like, let's get all the just chemicals and the junk that's in food, let's get it out because I need to know what's coming in. So that was really huge. And then travel was another one for me. And some people might scratch their heads at this, but travel is one thing that scares me. It's so funny. We actually we'll go on a trip and I'll do the booking, right? I'll do all the work. I'll do all the research. I'll book the trip. And then right before the trip comes, I'm like, no, I don't want to go. I'm fine. Like, we don't have to go. It's fine. And my husband's like, why do you do this every time? And I'm like, it scares me, and some people are like that. Some people love it and some people, it scares them. And I constantly push myself to travel more because in my mind, I think it's scary, but when I start to go, I realize how much learning there is and how much awareness that you can have about yourself by putting yourself in a different situation. So I always encourage people to, like, if they're scared to do something, do it anyway. Like, push yourself to try it because you're going to learn something about yourself and about the world. And ultimately, it's part of the journey. So, for me, in my healing journey, we actually went to Hawaii for a couple of years in a row. And the only reason that it pushed me was that I was afraid at one point that I would lose my sight, right? And so I said, I want to go back to Hawaii. We had gotten married there, my husband and I, and I said, I want to go back to Hawaii just in case something bad happens, just so I can see it. And it was crazy. We went there and I could see as if nothing had ever happened. I was able to wear contacts. It was like the craziest thing. And I'm like, what is happening? And ultimately, there's a magic there. I will have to admit that.
Yeah.
But I also think a big part was lowering my stress, being in happy emotions, being free, feeling just like, I don't know, like you're just amazed by the world, right? And so when you travel, it accesses different emotions in people. And just really looking, find that joy, right? Find the whys. Find why am I doing this? Why do I need to heal? What's important to me in my life? And so that was another piece. And then I think ultimately is my mind shift, right? Like we talked about at the beginning, making the decision, but in doing that, you have to remember that your mind is super powerful, and whatever you are putting out there in the world, that's what's going to come back to you. So like if you're going to constantly be in this woe's me, why is this happening? Well, you're reciting that over and over again. So you're putting that emotion out into the world. Well, the universe is going to answer that back, and that's what it's going to give you, right? So in shifting my mindset, making a decision, it was still there, like, why is this happening? But now I switched it to, I'm going to heal myself and I'm going to make a difference. Like I made a promise to myself, to the universe. I said, finding the answer to this, I'm going to share it with other people. Like that's my mission. Like if I can heal this, then other people can too. And And that's what I ended up getting back. So like one thing, here's like a smaller example, I guess, for people to kind of realize like visualization and meditation are huge. And part of how I learned how to do that too is I ended up in solving this huge problem that I had was I dove into the yoga classes. I actually went and got certified and in Viniyoga. And so it's a little bit more of a therapeutic type of yoga. It's a little bit less rigorous on the body.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing that, I realized how important visualization, meditation were. I always knew that they were, but not to the degree that I learned in training. And so just for example, like for the listeners too, to kind of take a takeaway here of like how you know your mind is powerful, how you can get real healing within the body, and understanding how powerful the mind is actually this podcast, right? I done a meditation, which is just, this is, I don't know, it gives me the chills sometimes. I actually done a meditation on how I want to get my book out there more and how I want to do a podcast and how I want to like really explode this and kind of where my goals are at. And 5 minutes later, after doing this meditation, I had gotten a message from our mutual friend who connected us. And I was like, whoa, okay, I put this out there. I really believed it would happen. And it's not just thinking it, it's really believing it, like feeling that feeling of gratitude, yes. Feeling that in the moment, I'm super, super thankful for this experience, right? And like as if it's already happening. And some people's minds work a little differently. For me, I see pictures or movie style in my head. So I can close my eyes and play back like a whole scene or have a conversation. And that's what I was picturing. Like, it was just like things are moving, things are happening. And then literally 5 minutes later, we get connected. And I'm like, there we go. Like this happened, you know?
That's funny because that is how it works. I mean, I have so many stories of that. And
yeah.
And that's basically, you know, I'm a hypnotist, and that's basically what self-hypnosis is visualizing that and then feeling the emotions of gratitude, and your brain starts to, you know, those neurons that fire together, wire together, it starts to make those connections then over and over. And then when you think about that goal, you get those positive emotions, and that like strengthens itself, right?
Absolutely. And it's really that heart-brain connection too. I've been doing a lot of studying too on the heart and the brain, and there's a definite connection between feeling that emotion in the heart versus just thinking it. And we say things like that all the time. Listen to your heart. You know, trust. I mean, you've heard trust your gut too, but I think sometimes we get that a little mixed up. Should we trust your heart? And there's this amazingness of how when you can focus inward and you can really listen in, that you can find that answer. And the heart knows, like, that's way more powerful than being that chatterbox up in your brain and like, what if this works? What if that works? And meditation is, you know, visualization is really, it really connects you to what is important, what you really want. You know, when I did the same thing with my eye, I played back a video of my doctor coming to me and saying, you know, I can't explain it, but like, whoa, you're healed. And what's crazy to me is thinking back to it now and comparing my video in my head to the actual like event video, right? They were pretty dang close. Like they were almost identical to my vision and what actually happened. I get emotional actually talking about it because it's like, it's magic, right? Like it's literally, you have the ability to heal yourself within. You just have to believe it. Like you just have to tap in.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was kind of the start of it. And then a really big push for me was where I ended up going to a couple of different energy healers. Like I had no idea what energy work was.
Sure.
If anybody had said that to me, I was like, yeah, okay, right, sure, whatever. And I'm sure that there's some people still out there, right? Like that they're like, I have no idea what she's talking about.
Probably not listening to this show, but yes, there are people out there.
It's so funny. I love having that conversation with somebody who hasn't looked into it at all. And I'll mention it. And I kind of will get the look of like, I have no idea. I don't know what you're talking about. And I love to talk to them because there's so much newness there. And then you see that spark kind of happening within them. Like, that's a possibility. Like, that's even a thing. Like, I had no idea. Any case, I ended up going to a few different people, and nothing wasn't really working. I didn't realize at that point too, like, how traumatic my emotions were, like how badly the negative emotions that I was having was really affecting. Like, I was getting better, but my scans weren't showing it. Like, emotionally I was feeling better, but my eye scans were still like kind of lagging. So I ended up finding a chiropractor actually across the street from our school. And he was doing a technique. It's called NAET or NAET. And it actually stands for Namuja Allergy Elimination Technique. And so what it is, it's muscle response testing. And what we're doing is asking the body what's connected to, like, what's the body allergic to. So once you kind of figure out what the allergies are, then we use acupressure. You can use acupuncture too. Some practitioners will use acupuncture. He just uses the pressure points. And we'll actually do the pressure points with the allergy in your hand. And then it basically rewrites your system. So it allows your body to change the energy flow and doesn't look at that negativity as an allergy anymore. So the easiest way that I can explain this, on one of the videos, I actually referred to it in the book, was we'll take an example of somebody riding a horse. And they riding a horse and they fall off, and it's a traumatic experience, right? And in the video that they have on the NAET site is, it's actually laid out really well, but the girl gets off her horse, and immediately after this traumatic experience, she leans against her saddle and she has a cup of tea to calm herself down, right? Well, because her emotions were so heightened, she all of a sudden forms an allergy to, let's say, the leather. It could be the tea. It could be the horse. I've even experienced things as as much as like the weather, right? Like hot, cold energy. And so basically your body is storing all this information. And it's doing that because it never wants you to feel that pain again. It never wants you to be in that emotional trauma again. So what it does is it tries to protect itself by throwing out these red alarms like, hey, I don't like it. Like, we need to change something. So a lot of times when people have food allergies, and this is actually where Dr. Devi is the author of Resetting Your Emotions. Actually, I'm going to throw this up on the video too, since we're doing that. This is an awesome book, Resetting Your Emotions by Dr. Devi Namujapad. And then she also has this other one. It's Say Goodbye to Illness. And these are both on my website as well. But she's an incredible woman who really dove into figuring out allergies. She had a lot of allergies herself. And so she was using her training to figure that out. And so what ends up happening in the body is your body never wants you to feel that. So if you have an allergy to, let's say, wheat, I ended up realizing that I had a huge allergy to gluten. Like that's where all this stuff had, kind of started from. I was like, man, like something's going on with my stomach. I don't get it. And what was interesting was wheat was actually tied to a lot of the trauma that I had. So it was tied to, when my son was in the hospital, it was tied to the house fire, because that's what I was eating at the moments of trauma. So your body kind of stores, it's like a computer system, and it stores all of this data. And then when everything kind of aligns again, it's going to send a red flag like, oh, this isn't okay for you. Like, we're just going to keep setting off alarms so that you actually listen, like you're actually hearing your body for once. And when something gets so bad, you have to make the decision to change it. And it has to be one of those decisions where not changing it would hurt more than actually doing the work to change it. So NAET is amazing. There is tons and tons of practitioners that do it. And you can actually, once in the book too, and on my website, you can find the information for that as well. But it's a super easy process as far as using it as an energy modality to find out what's connected to some of those trauma points. And I've referred a lot of my students over to my doctors who, they have cured just crazy stuff like low energy. I've had a couple that are actually working on weight loss. There's a few that have had other eye-related injuries, which has been kind of cool to like compare notes with that. I'm trying to think what other ones are. There's so many. We even did it on my daughter who had issues. She had an issue with public speaking. Every time she'd get up and speak in front of our martial arts class, she'd just start crying. And it was like, what's happening? So we did the NAET treatment on her for that, and she can get up and speak now and doesn't have an issue with it at all. So, and some practitioners will go really deep with it. Luckily, mine is very willing and able to like really dive deep into the emotions, where we're actually working on clearing self-limiting beliefs. That's been a huge one for me. I mean, like, you don't realize in the years that you're on this planet, like how many self-limiting beliefs that you accumulate as you go.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's absolutely, it's fascinating. Like, there's not a day that goes by that I'm not like, wow, I didn't know that about myself. Like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and in the end, I ended up, once I started clearing out the emotions, right? Like getting rid of that baggage, my health improved tremendously. Like my eye scans got better. My doctors were like, I don't even have an answer. Like, I don't get it. But I always think too, and I ask my husband this question all the time. I'm like, what was it about the whole journey? And he said, well, it was your whole journey. Like, had you not done all the things before that, then they may not have worked as well. Like you kind of needed all these things to really get your mindset in the right spot in order to accept healing too. And, he's absolutely right. Like, you have to want it, you have to accept it, and you have to know that it's possible. And then the sky's the limit.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate because doctors are so smart and they've studied so many things, but they don't understand, like they have no understanding for emotions. Like very few of them do, maybe some chiropractors, but they don't understand emotions. They don't really understand energy, right? Mm-hmm. Like they don't get down to that level. And then very few of them understand nutrition, right? Like most doctors, MDs, take a 3-hour nutrition course. And it's like our body is literally made up of what we eat. And it's insane to me that like you can get out of cancer surgery and they'll bring you a burger and fries, right? Like, and so, we have to question those things and find our own way to heal ourselves like you did. And it's amazing to hear that story.
Yeah. If you could take it even a step further too, I mean, talk about our food, right? And it's, what's the energy that was put into the food? Where did it come from? Like, mm-hmm. And if you're eating meat, right? Like, what were the living conditions of that animal before you even, processed it and ended up becoming your dinner? Like, it takes a moment to take a step back, but really looking at things deeper, it's like, wow, like our world is so connected and everything has a feeling, everything has a vibration to it. And so, you really have to be aware of what energy space am I in? Like, what am I allowing in food wise? Like what energy vibration am I bringing into my body? Who am I letting be around me? And, and then what are you giving back? Because there's so much importance to the vibration that you carry, mm-hmm. that if you're constantly putting out that gratitude out there and that wanting to help and that feeling that like need and that love for other people, well, that just doubles back to you. That's just the magic of life. And it's a blessing to be able to like share that with people and be able to talk about it, because a few years ago I had no idea.
Right. And I just did a podcast yesterday on gratitude, and like I've been focused on that lately, and just feeling that in your system, like just clears out so many negative things and it cancels out. Like I think when you eat, if you're in a state of gratitude, like if there is some energy in your food that may not be the healthiest, like I think for the most part, it cancels or offsets it. Like most of the time when we eat food, like we're judging ourselves like, oh, I shouldn't be eating this, or I'm thinking about something else, or we're stressed out. And so our body doesn't integrate that. But when you're like just grateful for the food that's in front of you or for whatever actions you're taking, like it gets rid of those emotions that are harming our bodies.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And that's the other thing too. It's like think about all the times where you maybe sit down and you watch a movie while you're eating, or like popcorn, right? Like you're at a movie and you're eating popcorn. But like, what movie are you watching? Like, and your body is absorbing the energy that's coming off of the screen too. So there was some research that I had like sat down and was kind of diving into about when you are eating. Same idea, like sit down and be grateful for it, but also make it a peaceful meal. Like make sure that if you are going to watch something, because I have a hard time not watching something. Like I love to just kind of relax and like, enjoy listening to somebody else teach me something. But that's the trick of it. Like watch something that is putting nutritional value in your mind too. I mean, there's a connection, physical, mental. Like you've got to keep it healthy. Otherwise, that's where you break.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm in total agreement with all of these things. So tell me, when someone gets your book or your workbook and you're taking them through a process, what does that look like for their own healing journey?
Yeah. So the book is laid out pretty simply. The first part goes a deep dive into my story, which you guys have gotten a little bit of a taste of today, but there's quite a bit more in there. And then the second half of the book actually walks you through my journey. So you're kind of following me along the years of like what's happening. And then it also gives you bullet points of what you can do to heal. And I wrote it in a sense of, again, it's for anybody dealing with anything. It does not have to be eye-related health. That was just my journey and, what kind of gives me that launching point to help other people. But the book actually, and anybody listening to will be able to get a copy of the workbook, and I'll show it on here for you. The workbook actually goes through and really just has you do a deep dive like we talked about earlier. It's a healing web, right? So you're just kind of doing a brain dump as far as how did you get in this situation in the first place? And your situation might not be that bad. It just might need a little tweak, right? And so you can use this for anything. And it kind of goes through on talking about like, is there any foods that are bugging you? And then, okay, let's talk about the stress. Like where's my stress coming from? How can I change it? And it really walks you through goal setting. It kind of just gives you a guideline of where to start. And then, so you can find that at nikkiengels.com/info. And I'm going to spell my name too, because most people get it spelled wrong. It's NIKKIENGELS.com/info, INFO. So you can download.
We'll put all that in the show notes too. So
yeah, awesome. Good. So yeah, you can download that for free and, work on that right away. And then the book, they can actually order on Amazon and they can go, there's a link on my website at nikkiengels.com. It's right on the main page, so you can't miss it. There's a link. It'll take you right to the Amazon. Right now we have the paperback book and the Kindle, and it's on Kindle Unlimited as well. And then shortly I'll be coming out with an audiobook, and I'll actually end up having a course going around the book as well. A lot of times people find it really helpful just to talk things out too. So That's my goal, is to make myself a little bit more available to help people. And really all they need to do is work through the steps that I have in the book. Reach out to me if they have any questions, and it's pretty straightforward. I tried to make it as simple as possible, but doable. Like it has to be doable. Otherwise people won't do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Simple. And a simple plan that gets executed on beats a plan that's complicated and nobody uses, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds good.
It's been amazing and inspiring to hear your journey and to hear how you're helping people and giving back. And, just to remind us that our minds and our habits and our rituals are powerful, right? And to maintain our energy and our emotions to create the life we want. And if something's not working for you, you have the power to change it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks, Nikki.
Thank you. Bye.